Start video.
Okay, did you just hear my assistant there?
Yep.
Okay, good. There we go. Yeah, did you not understand the concept of a Zoom?
I've zoomed before. I've been zoomed.
Yes. Well, we'll get to that stuff. The old school meaning of Zoom.
So who's zooming who? So you can see me?
Yeah, amazingly, and I'm not frightened at all.
So I want to see me. I can see me. Show self view. Okay. All right. Well, now I feel better because
right.
My poor self image.
Neither one of us wants to stare at the other. Let's get real.
That sounds like a song.
Yeah.
Neither one of us wants to stare at each other.
I think that probably everything sounds like a song to you.
Everything does sound like a song. Yes.
Exactly.
I have standard jokes like I say, and now here's a little something from my new album, and then put in the the phrase. That may happen within the hour. So go ahead.
I hope it does. That's because in addition to this little reunion that we're having, and we're going to get to the specifics about that. The main thing here is I want to hear your side. Sounds like you have to defend it, but I want to hear your creative journey. But
to the best of my recollection, I have never been a member of fill in the blank.
Fill in the blank. Okay, great. This is great. Okay, so before I get started in earnest here, so you could see me okay, I could see you okay, you look great. Hang on, Eric, because I have to. This is when I have to remind myself, especially when I'm talking with an old friend, and I've been lucky enough now to do this with a bunch of old friends. But you are going to represent the
oldest
of them. So I just need to remind myself to do an intro because this is where I remind myself that this is an actual show or I intend it to be. So anonymous artist and Sidney Mermelstein. Don't ask. Just think Broadway Danny Rose. Anonymous artist and Sidney Mermelstein present the Dave Bean is a C-List Actor Zoomcast with my very special guest. There you go.
Well, one's a C and one's an L, but I don't know which you're seeing.
Okay, yeah, it could be backwards. I don't know. C and a backwards L.
Or they're Roman numerals and you're 150, something like that.
Sometimes I feel that way. Okay, it is the Dave Bean is a C-List Actor. No, I still need to look at some notes here because I've done this intro so infrequently. Dave Bean is a C-List Actor Zoomcast. I am the eponymous host. Eponymous? Just a word I like to pull out whenever I can. And my very special guest. Now, tell me, Eric, if I've gotten this. This is my hyphenate based on what I've observed, heard, read about you, and feel free. I actually want you to correct this hyphenate. Okay. I have my very special guest, writer, musician, lyricist, and perhaps Broadway raconteur, perhaps.
You left out bon vivant.
Bon vivant and ne'er-do-well.
Well, all of those, yes.
This is Eric Weiner. Eric, welcome to my Zoomcast.
Hey, Dave Peoples.
There we go. Okay, let me take off my spectacles there, since I only need them to read with. First of all, I do kind of want to set the stage before we go off into our creative discussion, because this is where I remind myself that hopefully other people will be watching. And if at the very least, people that you know in your household and people that I know who are related to me or good friends with me, maybe they'll want to watch too. So I have known Eric, and this is I don't think I have spoken to anybody from my old high school. You're probably the first one that I can remember. Maybe Bobby Adler. I talked with him a time or two. But I think probably the last time you and I saw each other face to face, I'm going to put a number to it.
I have an idea, but
45 years ago?
Well, technically, no, because that would be high school.
Right. Okay. So have we seen each other since high school?
Yes. Now, you may have been under a tryptophan hallucination spell, but you were at my house for a Thanksgiving with Sandy.
Okay, now, yes, that is amazing. Not the least of which is because as we're recording this, we are approaching Thanksgiving, so there is another anniversary wrapped up here. This is great because.
But what year? But what year? I don't know. You would know better than me. I don't know.
All right, so that would have had to have been in the early 1980s.
Yeah, my guess would be like 84, 83, 85 at the most.
At the most, because I moved to Los Angeles January or March of 1986.
Okay.
So
it was, yeah, yes, it was in that early 80s, early mid
okay,
80s.
which is incredible because that also allows me, and good memory, good on you, because I hadn't remembered that specific incident. Wherever I am, whether there's Thanksgiving, it turns out to be an incident because there's very little food left for anybody else.
Well,
But
I have a good memory for those things, other than I didn't remember the specific year, but I can't remember when I walked in this room. So
yeah, that's short-term memory
yeah.
versus long-term memory. Absolutely. Yeah. So in saying that, this is why they probably also, we should add to your hyphen the segue king, because I made a couple of other notes here because, and this is the first one I haven't made notes with anybody else because I definitely want it to be totally.
You're not like hyphenating my height because I've been 5'8", 5'9", 5'10", and I've been 170, 175, 180, 185, 190.
Okay, whereas
professional hyphenations, not data points.
Right. Yeah, no, you can, as far as I'm concerned, whatever data point you have in regards to your vital statistics,
Yes.
I feel you, as the kids say, because I was originally listed, like many athletes, but I was listed on IMDb and in all the casting services as 5'8". But as anybody who's actually stood next to me, especially the short ones, would know, they would say, there is no fucking way you're 5'8".
Right.
Okay. Well, so it changed on IMDb to 5'8" to 5'7". And we can go off on a story.
Remember, Isaiah Thomas wasn't 6'1" either, so it's all fair.
Right. Absolutely. And I've stood next to Lou Whitaker back in the day, and not a tall gentleman, but yeah. So I'm actually, Eric, 5'5.5".
Well,
and
we are settling. Are settling.
Yeah. It broke my heart. I was auditioning for a play, and it was the first time in my acting life where they actually measured me. It was some show, and they took my height and weight at the casting session. There wasn't a costume involved, but I guess they wanted to know that. And when they told me I was 5'5.5", it kind of broke my heart a little bit.
But you can tell them, looks Tom Cruise, height Tom Cruise.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, let me do this. Okay, since you and I are from the same, and I promise you are going to get many words in edgewise here, but I'm so excited to talk to you and see you in person. We've spoken on the phone 2 or 3 times in the past decades.
Maybe a few, 4 or 5, but yeah, it's something like that.
All right, still single digits since that Thanksgiving dinner.
Yes, probably so.
All right, so Eric lives and is a wonderful family, and has had from what I understand, as an outsider looking in, has had a very, very wonderful life in the old neighborhood. What you refer to as the neighborhood, I refer to it as the old neighborhood, since I left there in 1986. Right?
At some point I would call it the hood, but at some point, given going back to settling and sediment, the hood. At some point, it's the hood. So
the hood. God, listen. You and I are going to take this on the road because I actually have the word shtetl written down here. Okay, and then I've also used words like posse and crew, which we did not use when we were kids. We just called them friends, and we hung out with our friends.
Gang, not gang. We did call ourselves the Ely Boys, our elementary school.
Your elementary
We were
school,
known to some people and to ourselves as the Ely Boys.
and a very intimidating crew,
Right.
to be sure. Which
I'm thinking of the Ely Boys, the musical, but that's another story.
that's another. See, there you go. You can't help but write these things.
They write themselves. I'm just here.
Yeah. Well, no. That's in your DNA. They don't write themselves. You have to be that person who's wired that way to do that. But let me compare ourselves to growing up in the suburban Detroit version of Little Italy, Marty Scorsese's neighborhood. Okay. All right. So I'm just gonna this is the only notes I wrote because I just found this amusing when I thought of it. So obviously I knew you, but we weren't the best of friends. We were friends.
We were friends of friends because like we shared Al.
Right.
And or that group.
Right. Yes.
So we became friendlier.
Yeah. In the Venn diagram, well, I should watch how I do with these. This means something totally different now than it did. But in the Venn diagram, you and I had lots of friends in the different groups.
Venn friends.
Yeah, exactly. Friendly friends. Okay, but so I knew you. So this is me. So imagine this is Little Italy in a Scorsese movie. And even though we were spread out over many suburban blocks, it really is in the old school just a few blocks where we all lived.
At no point do I get whacked, right?
Unless this is pre-recorded. Okay. So, and it may yet happen afterward. We'll see how this goes. Okay. So I knew you. I knew your brother Bruce.
Right.
I don't know that if I went to this Thanksgiving dinner, I probably met your younger brother, but when we were kids.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I went off to college, the same college as a young lady who would eventually become your sister-in-law, Shelley.
Yes.
Right? Who married Bruce.
Correct.
Right? Okay, so this is like connecting. And
you've gone to the bonus round. Ding, 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 ding. Go ahead.
Here's the bonus round, though. This is it. And eventually I started to date a young lady, a very bright, attractive young lady at the University of Michigan. You were at Michigan State, I believe.
Correct.
I started dating a young lady who I knew I'd known peripherally, but I started dating her, Sandy, who, as it turns out, and I really don't think I had any idea until we were dating, that she was your cousin.
Exactly.
I mean, come on now. This is to me, this is like our version of like a Scores. I know you and of you and around you in a whole bunch of different ways.
It's like West Virginia, but yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah. Okay, that does it for my notes. Okay, so let me get back to you now. So in your hyphenate description of yourself, sincerely.
Yes.
How would you, and you may have never ever done this before, because what I found is that when creatives are busy creating for real, you're not really thinking about what to put on the business card or what people would call you, or you know, because at any moment, I've been a producer, I've been a director, I've been a writer, I've been an actor, I've been a Zoomcast / podcast host. In your creative world, what would that hyphenate start with? What did it start with? And where has it evolved into? What has it evolved into?
I would have to start with lyricist because that's where I seriously got into finding what I liked or what I thought I did best, and which came about because, you know, from being in a band. But, you know, going backwards, when I started writing comedy, actually I did that when I was 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 10, 12, way before I got into music, because I was never a musician. I just had a ear for music, and got into a band and started singing and then started writing songs. I didn't even actually start playing guitar basically till I was 40. So the being able to play guitar part is just like, you know, cherry on top of the sundae for me, and helps me, mentally think about the process when in songwriting, but primarily lyricist. But I've always written comedy, with my brothers and friends. We've always done skits, and I just never, at the younger age when I started as a lyricist, when I was basically 17,
Right.
I didn't do that till later. So I would have to say lyricist first, but I could be convinced otherwise.
Yeah, yeah. So as an outsider looking in now, this is great to hear. So I'm glad that I somewhere put the lyricist in there, because you've always been good with words, or at least as I've known you, when we were kids in the old neighborhood, I had no idea the creative thing that was going on inside of you. I didn't. I had no clue. You were the nice guy, athlete, good kid,
Mama's boy.
Mama's, yeah, okay. And I might have hit on that had I known your family in high school. I didn't really know them until this famous Thanksgiving dinner.
I almost spit out my coffee.
I was going to say spit. I got a spit take. I want some credit for that. Yeah, thank you. Hey, it's your screen. Go for it. But
coffee.
But so I did not. The thing that I think surprised me the most was I started performing in a what I've been referring to over the years to people who did not grow up where we grew up as a local Detroit garage band we just did covers. We didn't really do any original material at all.
Right.
They asked me to be the lead vocalist. I was never really a singer. I could carry a tune. I sang at a few bar mitzvahs. I'm sure I embarrassed lots of people there, but
I think that's life at my younger brother's bar mitzvah.
Oh, did you really?
And I'm not sure. It's possible. It was my dad's friend who was the band leader. He was a drummer, and he played in a wedding bar mitzvah band. And at some point in time, his bass player was Don Fagan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
wow.
Before he was Don
Fagan.
He was,
Don absolutely.
Was. So he said to me, Eric, back when I was in the band, the punk band, he goes, this bass player is a pretty good musician. You got to meet him. He's a guy from Oak Park, a younger, 10 years older than me, but, not 150 like my dad's friend. And I'm like, Don Fagenson, how the hell is he going to make it? There's already a Donald Fagen. How could there be a Don Fagenson that makes sense?
Right.
What do I know?
Yeah, he figured it out. Right.
He figured it out. Actually, we were put together when I was in LA, and I talked to him a couple of times, and he was very nice. He would have liked to get together and talk about songwriting and whatever. He was in the process of producing Bonnie Raitt's massive comeback album Nick of Time and Iggy Pop Candy, and the B-52s Love Shack. I was like, and you didn't have time for me? Go figure.
Yeah, go figure. But
first name drop of the day. Thank you.
Yeah. But
ding, ding, ding.
Isn't it? I mean, it really is very telling, though, that you were still I want to say, you were still under the same sun as that guy, and there was a relationship there, and there was a creative exchange and conversation, and there was a respect of artists there. I think that's fair to say, and that's a pretty big league name to have in your pocket,
to be big time by. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. It's okay to be big time by somebody who's big time. Who's big time. Exactly. So then the next thing that I recall, so I'm doing my cover band thing, and I don't know, there's no way to ever track the evolution of this, but the next thing I know is that you are you're performing, headlining, or fronting a group called, the first one was Luke Mucus and the Phlegm.
Right. We wanted to be the Sex Pistols when the Sex Pistols came out.
Right.
And we fancied ourselves to, you know, when it first came out, we thought this is the worst thing we've ever heard, but we found it hysterical, and or we were fascinated by the whole scene.
Punk
And
rock,
then
we were talking
rock
about. Okay.
in 77/78, well, 77
Right.
really. And we kept reading about it in Cream magazine and Rolling Stone and everything, and we're like, we got to do this, you know. And so we did.
So
So
you
if
did
it
it,
was,
so at first it was kind of like a comedic endeavor.
it
It
was
was,
totally a joke. It
yeah,
was totally to entertain ourselves. It was totally to be as loud and obnoxious and swear as often as possible while rhyming.
right,
Um, and you know, there weren't videos in MTV. It was, you know, before that, so we didn't have that much role model other than what we saw occasionally on TV or something.
right,
So,
right,
and we weren't old enough to go into the clubs
right,
until we were booked into the clubs. We
right.
were actually thrown out the first night because only one of us was 18. I was
It's a
almost
punk
18.
story. That is a punk story.
Yeah, yeah. So the very first time we played at Bookies, which was the CBGBs of Detroit,
Yeah,
um, the Police played 2 months later at the same place.
amazing, amazing.
You know, but they had an A&M record contract and a hit single, but punk bands played at punk bars. Nobody knew what to make of them. So
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and that, see, this is great. This is great. What I remember is playing my band around wherever we played in suburban Detroit, and that the next thing I know, you guys, your band is like, not that we didn't have records or things like that, that we weren't doing that, but your band was just everywhere that we weren't. And I just remember being like, Eric Weiner is fronting a punk rock band, and I saw
it made perfect sense to me. I don't know.
yeah, right, yeah. It was a mind blower. But the thing that I saw, because I obviously you guys were playing everywhere, and you couldn't help but run into you on the weekends, because we might have been playing somewhere, but you guys were playing all over the place, and you guys were way more invested and enthusiastically artistic, even if originally you meant it as a lark.
At some point, it you know, everything, you know, morphs a little bit.
Right,
The music scene morphs, and at some point where we initially wanted to be, let's say, the Sex Pistols and or the Clash, we love the Clash and still do.
right,
But at some point, we were sounding and wanted to be more like the Romantics, the Knack, and it was power pop. And
right.
we actually got a manager, and the manager took Dave Perry and I, and he met with us because we were the main songwriters, and he
Yeah,
was the lead guitarist. And he goes,
yeah, he's great.
right,
He's
yeah,
great.
it was a great, like one of those great agent moments or manager moments. And he goes, write hits. And we literally sat down and started writing what we thought were commercial, but not sellout commercial, because we still wanted to most importantly entertain ourselves.
Right.
And
Wait, yeah,
wherever we played, we didn't care if half the people didn't get it.
right,
The
right,
half that got it were
right.
the 100% who loved us. So we always had 100% following.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Great, 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 great. Yeah, that's terrific. That's always the advice that I've gotten. It must be just that same school of management and agents and things like that I've had from my, Dave, you've got an opportunity now to write something and get it produced. So do us a favor, do everyone a favor, write a great script
Right.
so we can sell it to the biggest studio
Right.
possible.
Oh, write a great script. Oh,
Yeah, right.
Now you're telling.
Right, exactly. Oh, I'm so glad. This is why I hired you guys.
Note to self, write a great script.
Write a great script, because all I've been trying to do is write these mediocre and very poorly written scripts, which definitely a few of those. But anyway, now that's a great point. Eric, we're going to take a 1-minute break here. And so I'm gonna pause our show, and we'll be back. Give me, you know, Okay, he meant it. All right, I'll be back with you in just a minute. Back to it. Okay. And we're back with my very special guest lyricist. He can't help it, people. He just can't help it. Can't stop. Can't stop, won't stop, never stop stopping, something like that. Okay, so at some point, I heard, and this is great because you can confirm these recollections that I have.
Mm-hmm.
So there was Luke Mucus in the phlegm, and when did that become, or what is lukewarm? Where did that come from?
We at some point that kind of genre or name or whatever, shock value, etc., which we were all about. It was less actually what we were, and it was less ability to get gigs and things like that. So we were clearly angling towards being a new wave band as opposed to a punk band or a power pop band. And you know, our actual favorites were, aside from the Clash was still there, you know, Elvis Costello, Joe Jackson. But you know, that's coming from a background where every musician in the band, all of us had different tastes. There were hard rock, there was singer-songwriter, there was progressive rock, there was all these things, and we all sort of dug punk and new wave. So it all was a weird hybrid mishmash. And we always liked to put on a show. We always wanted to be as rehearsed as possible, as tight as possible, and to segue all the songs where everything was figured out, where there wasn't a lot of in between. We would work out our, you know, things. So
right now, so did you guys, because of your eclectic background individually in your band, did you guys ever clash heads?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, our lead guitar player was a lead guitar player. He wanted to play, you know, leads, and he wanted to be Van Halen, which actually wasn't the music we were playing. So, you know, while Dave, as the lead guitar player, was the musical leader of the band, and some points Randy, our drummer, who you know was actually the leader of the band, and he was kind of the cool. He was Captain Cool for the cool family. People came to see us just to see our bass player Burrito play, because he looked like Brian May with the hair, and he stalked like Gene Simmons. He stalked the stage like Gene Simmons. He was a show unto himself. But the actual propulsion was our rhythm guitar player, Kevin, who you know as well.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So that was, you know, it was the base of the sound, really, was the of that. And then me with you know, visual and or, you know, my shtick. So
right. So you were so, because I know that, you know, just like a lot of, like, I mean, I'm going to dig back and maybe you can help me out with this. Like, you know, a lot of people, when they went to a Uriah Heep show, assumed that the lead singer's name was Uriah Heep. You know,
at some point I became Luke, and people, there are people who only know me as Luke, call me Luke, and it would be weird if they called me Eric. So
isn't there something?
And it would be weird if other people called me Luke, but I'm not offended in any way, shape, or form. So
yeah, that's good. Well, and listen, that's kudos to you and how well you created. And then you know, at least from my perspective, and perhaps from your perspective, because now we'll evolve a little bit further. But that was a character, whether you intended to create him, that was a character that was created, that came out of you, and you've now had to, you know, you've lived with your whole life.
Yeah. I mean, so, you know, not unlike obviously a different genre than Alice Cooper, but he wasn't originally Alice Cooper. That was the name of the band. He became Alice Cooper, you know, by, you know, happenstance, and or he became that character. So, you know, the character of Luke was the M's, you know, almost like Fred Schneider from the B-52s. It's like he's just an entertainer, whether he's got talent or not, nobody cares. He's fun, he's entertaining. So, you know, I was one part Fred Schneider, I was one part Frank Sinatra, I was one part Tim Curry from, you know, the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And, you know, any other front man who, you know, makes an ass of himself.
Right. But that, you know what, but that's when you take, I don't know if you've ever taken an acting class, but when you take an acting class, one of the first things that you have people that like run out of the room, they take one acting class, they don't continue, because what you realize is that in addition to some innate talent that you might have for the craft, you have to be willing wholeheartedly to embarrass yourself. Think about the weirdest performances that your favorite actors have ever given.
Yeah.
And you just have to be able to embarrass yourself.
I'm more comfortable doing that
Right.
than actually being real and showing
Right.
emotion and feeling. I'm much
Yeah.
better with a character and a caricature
Right.
and a
Right.
ridiculous voice, because I do voices and always have, and that
Right.
type of thing. So
Right.
that's
Yeah.
more my
So
comfort.
somebody like you would have never, if you would have not, you wouldn't have ever needed to be told, oh, Eric, from time to time, you might need to embarrass yourself, get up there in front of an audience and embarrass yourself.
I would generally beat them to the punch and do that before they knew what was coming. So
yeah.
why did he do that?
Exactly.
I don't even understand that. What was that? I don't know.
Yeah. And I've never had an issue. This is why when in my Sash days, the band that I was in, I
And I do
they said
remember seeing you guys play. I don't remember specifics, but I do remember seeing you guys play on a couple of occasions.
We're better that way. If you don't remember, we're better that way. We had a lot of fun.
I thought it was good. I didn't know any better. I thought it was good.
You know what? I thought we were pretty good. I thought our guys. I didn't play an instrument. Still don't play an instrument. I just had the long, what I refer to as in retrospect, since my hair is in retrospect.
You had good hair.
Yeah, I had the good hair. I had the David
parted in the middle appropriately, feathered.
Oh yeah, I was very much of that time. I could carry. I don't know that I had a good voice, but my voice wouldn't crack, and I could stay on track. You know what I mean? So I could fake it. And what I realized eventually was the reason that I had no hesitation about taking the job was, in the end, when those guys, some of them thought about coming out to Hollywood, and a couple of them did, to make it in the music industry, and did pretty well. But I knew that wasn't going to be my path, because the epiphany for me was that, I'm not a lead singer. I'm acting like a lead singer.
That I was the same way, and that's when I sort of morphed to songwriter boy.
Right.
Songwriter boy.
Right. Which, okay, so lyricist, songwriter. Let's skip ahead, and then we'll maybe backfill.
Yeah.
Because where you and I had our most recent interaction was because, and clarify this with me, you had written the lyrics or the song for a show called Bojangles, which may very well be, at some point, it is played on stages in New York, in Brooklyn. It's played in Portland, Oregon.
Yep.
Right. And
if we can only hit Peoria in the middle, we'll be all set.
Right. We'll be fine. Exactly. Because as the kids might not know, if it plays in Peoria,
right,
it's got a chance. Tell me the story of how the whole Bojangles evolved and your involvement in it.
Okay. So somewhere along the line, it was suggested to me, and Randy was a little bit involved, but Randy had set me up when I lived in LA for a year, 89, 90. And through a guy who was in an Australian band, let's call it a notch or two below Split Ends and Crowded House, but it was some type of compatriot of theirs. I met this guy, and we were talking about possibility of writing songs, and I think he first said, "Have you ever thought of writing musical theater?" And I'm like, "No, but that's a great idea, given my predisposition and or interest and or for comedy, which is actually more so than my musical abilities."
Right.
So when I got back to Detroit, eventually I sought out as a member of ASCAP different opportunities, and I landed on one which we wrote a play called The Lulus, and it was not staged, but we had made an entire cast album in Raleigh, North Carolina, and
Wow.
it was pretty good. And it was a real heavy work process with the composer and the book writer. And while that didn't materialize the way we all wanted it to, I took that cast album and used that as a calling card and found the creator of what was originally called Dance Bojangles Dance, the story of Bill Bojangles Robinson, in the New York area. A choreographer by trade, but he's also a singer and a dancer as well. So through the Brooklyn Theater Arts Project, we staged the initial 10 performances of Dance Bojangles Dance. Flash forward, unfortunately, 15 years, while we had always intended to take that show on the road and make it bigger off Broadway and or so we had a producer. We were locked in contractually to a producer. We even had meetings in New York post the Brooklyn production. For whatever reason, many of which are the some of the creators and myself, they were working singers and dancers, and if they got 6 months in a show or on a cruise ship, or they took it. So every year or two, we tried to get it going and tried to get a regional theater interested in it. Long story short, through performances and directing and choreographing in the Portland area, which has a great theater center. Portland, Stumptown stages in the Portland. It's called the Portland Five. So there's 5 different theaters all in this one area. It's kind of like Cleveland. It's the same thing. We had a month-long run in Portland, and it went really, really well. We changed the name to Bojangles of Harlem. It may or may not change its name a third time. We had some personnel and or some health issues post-COVID, etc., where we've lost about a year, but that's sort of how I got to it. Offshoot had wrote 2 half plays with some of the people that I had met in New York initially through the first round of Bojangles. So technically I've worked on 4 shows writing the lyrics, and for Bojangles I did write some of a little bit of the music. I wrote the melody for one of the songs and rework things and work with 3 different composers at one point, so that was a little confusing. So we finally honed it down, and we look to and take it to a regional theater, which I think I've mentioned to you, I call the minor leagues. It's like AAA. If you can go to AAA Toledo, you might be called up to Detroit to the big times, or if you're in Columbus, you might get called up to the Yankees. So it's not like we're looking to put it anywhere. We're looking to put it in the right spot that will incubate it, give it legs, and be able to then take it to a bigger level. And now there's other options, because you could take a show to Vegas. You could take the show and tour it before you actually house it off Broadway, on Broadway, etc.
Right. Now it's a great journey. And for those of us, and I touched base with, I was interviewing a guy named Frank Mendelacino, terrific Chicago-based theater actor who's also a baseball nut, and we did a lot of a lot of baseball metaphors that also apply to the creative arts. And you're absolutely right. Regional theater is great. Many actor friends of mine have made very good livings just at the regional theater level. And of course, you realize, just like the in professional baseball, I mean, in major leagues, you only have about, 850 to 1,000 players at any one time, but the
Right.
minor leagues are populated by, 10,000 players or whatever. And the same
Right.
thing with the regional theaters all over the country. But it's a great proving ground. And yeah, and in the old days, if you had something that was Broadway bound, you'd get to Boston or Philadelphia or Washington, D.C., give it
Right.
its preview. And then if it had legs, then it would, make its way on up to Broadway. But you're
Right.
right, you can absolutely take it anywhere you want.
There
You
were
know,
a
which
number of
which is
places
a
that
great
were
thing.
thrown out as possibilities, of which were
Mhm.
fun either geographically or friends and family in those areas, and all, sexy or not sexy areas. But realistically, it's just like being a ball player. If somebody wants you to be a professional ball player, you're happy to be there, even though, yeah, I'd rather play for, let's say, the Lakers or the Knicks. But if I'm
Right,
playing for the Minnesota Timberwolves, life isn't so bad,
right, right.
not to denigrate the
Absolutely.
Minnesota Timberwolves.
Yeah. No, you're
Just
absolutely right. And that's part of the reason how I ended up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, because it was I'm operating more at a regional level, certainly from a theater standpoint, which I didn't get enough. Big league theater was really not available to somebody like me who has no singing and dancing ability at all. But
that
at
never
the
stopped anyone.
that never well it never stopped me from trying. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I certainly got cast in shows, and I've related this too. I mean, I've been cast in musicals where they literally called me and said, "Hey, you got the role, but we're going to cut out. Don't worry, you won't have to do any singing or any dancing." So I was like, "Is that a compliment that you guys cast me?" I thought, well, I'll get to do my shtick,
Right.
usually a comedic part, and there'll be a paycheck behind it. So I guess it's a good thing. You
Well,
know,
it's interesting because I'm learning a lot, and not being technically a theater guy, I'm amazed by everyone's level of talent and expertise in their various areas, and that I'm including stage managing and all of that, because
oh yeah, oh
it's
yeah,
unbelievable the amount of time and effort that people put into a 30-day run in Portland. Is a monumental, effort. And I got to sit in the music pit, which is actually under the stage. We were up
right,
like a bomb shelter, so they were dancing actually above us, and I was
crazy.
sitting in with the musical director for the first half of the show, and it was a hoot. It was great.
Wow. Well, yeah, no, that's a great experience. And of course, yeah, the music pit would have to be below, because if it was not, you'd be blocking the audience. But that's just because I'm a genius and I just figured that out.
Yeah, thinking down the road with a bigger stage and a bigger setup, it would be cool to have the band on the stage in the back, not in the
Right,
front, and make it
right,
look like um, a speakeasy, a band from the 1920s or 1930s,
right,
because it's
right.
that genre of music. So,
Yeah.
which is interesting to see a punk from Detroit writing a musical about Bill Bojangles Robinson from music from the 20s and 30s. But
Hey, this is the beauty part of being creative and being open to creative opportunities as they come in. You don't know how, what's gonna come over the transom. Look that
right,
one up, kids. Google transom. It was a thing. But in regards to producing a show, for my purposes, yeah, I haven't produced any theater. My production partner has produced and directed theater, Robert Dominic Jones, and you can watch him on our episode number 5 of this first season. But I had the opportunity to produce and direct television, which was not something that was even on my radar at all. I just wanted to be an actor, wrote something, somebody read it, somebody said you can make this, but you've got to produce and direct it.
right.
And I
What do you
was,
do?
so I was like, all right. But the beauty part for me, and it was that I'd been on, at this point, because this was just literally in the 2010s, so it's not that
Right.
long ago. This was like 2015, 2014, 2015, when the opportunity presented itself. By that point, having started in the business with my first job being a music video in 1987. So this is 2014. And I was like, you know what? I've been on set in over 300. I never thought about it before, but I've
Right.
been on over 300 movies, TV shows, commercials, industrial, educational films, all those less sexy, less glamorous acting jobs that you never ever hear about, but that pay the bills. But
Right.
300 sets, individual sets, where because I'm so in love with the process of filmmaking, uh, movie making, television making, that even when I wasn't working, even when my character wasn't necessary on set, I would just stay
Right.
on set just to be near the camera crew. I wanted to just listen to how they communicated with each other, and where at that time when I started, where the film went. I literally followed like the third AC, the third assistant camera person. Where's he taking the film? Putting it in this thing, taking it over to the studio, up to where's he taking the card? Where's the hard drive going? Where does that go? So that by the
Right.
time I got the opportunity to produce and or direct, I said, I know what the workflow is. I know how this works. I know how to talk to people. And I might be pretty good with actors since I've been an actor for most of my life. And so that's where the opportunity came for me. You've had a little bit of a different route, because you were kind of outside of that, but obviously because of your talent and your tenacity, you put yourself inside, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of both those things, and there's there's the obviously the believing in yourself type of a thing.
Right.
But I've noticed, especially from a lot of artists, music artists, and I suppose it's actors as well, and comedians, um, you have to think you're better than you actually are. So
Fake it till you make it, sort of thing.
it's not it's like, because I see people who are considered great and good,
Right.
but you can tell that they actually believe that they're the best.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah, you
so
need a certain measure of hubris, conceit, whatever you want to call it,
you have
delusion.
to. Yeah.
I am testament to that, because once I got started, I never left. I just never left. I just felt I belong, and now that I can actually, look in the mirror and say, yes, you are a C-list actor. But I don't know that those lists exist, but I'm, as what was that, that song from I'm still here and I'm
Right.
still doing it. And it has to be a little bit of confidence, self-delusion, being able to pay the bills a little bit,
Right.
but also really loving what you're doing. And for me, and obviously for you, to be involved in these kind of creative endeavors, you just have to love it every single day. I've never gotten tired of it. Doesn't mean that I haven't done other things in life,
Right.
but it's never been an option that I'm gonna, you know what, I don't think I'm gonna do this anymore. It's sewn into my DNA. It's sewn into your DNA,
I
about
get
doing.
I get a little less opportunity to interact at this point because I would sit, even when I was in a band, obviously that was interacting and practicing and performing and getting that feedback. But from being I would literally write for hours. I would stay up all night and write.
Right.
I was writing when I started writing musical theater. I would obsess about the song, because there was generally a task at hand. There's a song and there's a storyline and there's a direction from the book writer, what the character should be doing or not saying, things like that. And a lot of that is by yourself time. So I enjoy spending my time alone doing that.
Right.
I super enjoy the opportunities when I get to actually work and collaborate with somebody,
Right.
because that's, kind of the special magic-y part, the by myself writing. In the same, when the interim 15 years is when I kind of morphed into writing comedy,
Right.
is I enjoy writing and cracking myself up. If I can then share it with somebody and crack them up, you know, that's kind of a bonus, or get
Yeah,
my foot in the door and submit material, etc.
yeah.
You know,
So
so
you were along those lines. So this is great. Again, the Segway King, Eric Weiner. There you go. You were kind of an early adopter, it seems to me, once YouTube and streaming and watching clips more so than watching entire shows. Would you consider yourself more of an early adopter? Because during those times when, I hadn't spoken to you in a decade or two or whatever, the next thing you know, I'm seeing Eric Weiner comedic video clips and whatever. And again,
no, it's probably the opposite. I appreciate the semi accolade, but I'm one of the denser motherfuckers you'd ever want to meet, and I'm always technologically 5 to 10 years behind everyone.
wow,
So
wow.
it was out of necessity that I generally go, oh, I can play guitar. So I did 20 years ago. I started playing guitar. So during COVID, when none of us had anything to do, and so I shaved my head like that. It's like I'm looking in a mirror right now, and I started doing, as I was getting a toe or a toenail in the door in the comedy writing world, and getting good feedback and a couple of opportunities to submit material. I go, okay, well, it hasn't quite happened yet or as fast yet. What else can I do? Well, I could be funnier. That would help. But I could be smarter, but that's not going to happen.
Right.
Um, so I started making videos. And so I would do, and I started the YouTube channel, Eric Weiner's What I Did on My Pandemic Vacation, and
Right.
started basically doing like a weekend update, doing the news of the day or the news of the week, and
Right.
making jokes like I was, Letterman, Colbert, etc. Um,
Jon Stewart, that sort of
John
thing.
Stewart, John Oliver, etc.
Right. Right.
So I was unbelievably nervous. I'm by myself. I have the script. I think it's funny, and I couldn't have been more nervous, and I couldn't have been probably more worse than I was. But eventually, I got comfortable, and
Right.
and sort of hit a sweet spot, and then would do, okay, I can do this, but I can do this, with my eyes closed. So I started doing, tackling a subject. So
Mhm.
doing basically a bit or one subject matter for each episode,
Right.
or then I started playing characters because I got bored of actually like being the real Eric person.
Right.
So I, donned characters and voices and things like that.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
Shaved my head, took off my shirt. Um,
Going back to what we were talking about, as an actor, you're just, if you're going to put it out there, you're just going to embarrass yourself and be willing, especially if you think you've got a character for real that you want people to see or that you want to express. You want to do it as truthfully and real as possible, and you've been willing to do that. And you've also been willing to sit here with me for the past almost an hour and share. How's that for a segue? How's that for ta-da? So yeah, I want, Eric, this has been a really invigorating conversation. These are questions that I've wanted to ask you and wanted to listen to what you had to say for a number of years now. And I do want to thank you. I would love to do this again because I have a feeling
Absolutely.
we could
Did we scratch the surface, or did we kind of hit what you wanted?
Well, no, it went where it went, and I think again for my purposes, it hit the highlights that I was genuinely curious about, and I think that our audience are going to be primarily people who are interested in the nuts and bolts of performing artists doing what they do. Writers, lyricists, actors. Again, I'd be thrilled if if we got anything broader than that as an audience. But again, as you said, you were doing it for yourself. I'm doing this for myself. I've had curiosity about people that I've known creatively my whole life, and I always want to know what makes them tick and what their story was. So I think I've got a pretty good idea now, more so than I've known of you in the past 45 years or so.
The one little thing that I want to mention is what we didn't talk about is for basically from the time I was 4 to 18, I spent
Mhm.
most of my time, other than with friends and playing ball and stuff like that, drawing. I would sit for hours and draw. So
Wow.
I envision myself as a cartoonist or an artist or whatever.
My
But
God.
while I was doing that and reached a level where I said, I'm not that good anymore, or as good as I thought, I listened to music the entire time,
Yes,
so
yes. It
everything is there.
osmosis.
Yeah.
Yeah, it played the part. But see, you have I've always envied this about people with artistic souls and artistic talents. Because over the years, and I've been very blessed that I've met people in every discipline, in every field in the creative universe, A-list, aspirational folks just starting out, and mostly folks such as myself who've just been trying to cobble it and put it together and make a life. Um, but the thing that I found with most of the artists that I just am fascinated with is this multidiscipline artistic talent that you guys have. And I will put that, it doesn't surprise me at all that in addition to writing lyrics and writing music, you're in the punk world and in the musical theater world and in the comedy world, and you're playing guitar, that you're also drawing. It just blows my mind. People have asked, like, I'm surprised that I got a chance to do more than act. At least it's within, the field that I've been in my whole life. But I can't. I tried to play an instrument, no talent. I can't do anything more than stick figures. I've tried. I went to art school. They showed me the door. I'm not. They showed Mrs. Bean, come and pick up your son David. Good luck. So
When I lived in Detroit before we moved to the burbs,
yeah,
my parents sent me to Cranbrook, which was a big deal for my parents were teachers. It wasn't like we
absolutely.
were, they sent me to an art school because they go, this kid might have something. I don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah. But you clearly, if you were drawing for all those years, whether or not it was good by, you know, uh, any kind of outside judgment,
right,
it was
right,
in you and you couldn't stop doing it if you tried. I have a
right,
brother, I have a brother who is the exact same way. You could never stop him from drawing. It just,
right.
in me, I'm like, when it finally came time to writing scripts, I wrote because they said that they would produce it and they would give me some money for it. But
Right.
when it wasn't happening, they would say, "Well, geez, Dave, you must have a whole drawer full of scripts because you wrote this one that got produced." I'm like, "Nah, not really. I'm good. I'm good. Don't need to
one for
do it."
one for one.
Yeah,
Batting
yeah.
a thousand.
Well, of the produced ones, yeah, it ended up. I would say just on that note, which is a good point, one for one, but the original one that I wrote, which is, I think, what I discussed with you a number of years ago,
Yeah, yeah.
the original one that I wrote has never got produced. Those are still, 5 scripts sitting in a drawer. The
Right.
second one got produced, and then there was a more that came of that. So I was on the payroll, so I'm like, absolutely, I'll keep writing them. You keep the checks coming in, and I'm
Right.
happy to do it. Now, I enjoyed the process. There is something about knowing that you are going to be remunerated for your work ahead of
Right.
time, which makes it an
Good
awful lot.
motivation.
So it was enjoyable, and but right before the pandemic, had I took maybe 2 years to got a feature script written that we were this close to producing. Then the pandemic hit. Short film that I wrote, we were in pre-production on March 20th, 2020, when the world shut down. So those are sitting in the proverbial file folder on my desk, or whatever. But the point is, I'm doing this. I've acted, been blessed enough to keep acting. I've never been, I've never felt the calling to do anything else more than performing. So again, I've always thought, well, I got to be, because the artists that I respect and admire all have this tool chest full of creative outlets. And anyway, so I include you in that group, and I've learned so much more about you, Eric. And in truth, I've always had this admiration for you because you were a stand-up guy when we were kids, and that's the reputation that you had. But you were a stand-up guy, and from everything that I can see and observe and hear and read, you became a stand-up man, and you continue being that. And I wish you the best of luck, and I hope I get to keep in touch with you and keep learning as your artistic career and journey continues to grow and evolve. So thank you.
Try to be stand up. My posture isn't as good as it used to be, but
that's okay. That's the beauty of being on Zoom, is it's all, it's all right here. But thank you very much, Eric, for sitting with me and opening
thank you. It's been fun. I have one question.
Yes.
So this session is coming to an end.
Yes.
Where do I send the $150 check? Because this has been a very good session for me.
Sydney, shut him down now. Okay. All right. Yeah, we gotta go. Yeah, I'll call you and we'll talk about the money later.
So that was a psychologist joke. That wasn't a SAG-AFTRA joke. That was a therapy joke.
See this?
See, when you have to explain the jokes, then there's a problem on my end.
And this is no. It could also be that might have flown over me. I'm under the radar, but this is also why, thank goodness, they have editing. And so I will make us both look like geniuses, although one of us needs more help than the other. And I'm not going to say
in editing, that's going to be hysterical.
Which is why, to be honest with you, almost nothing ever gets edited out of this. I've learned that's the fun stuff. That's the good stuff. So at this point, I'll do what any novice, because I'm really a novice. I made it through the whole pandemic without ever having a Zoom meeting. Yeah,
I had a bunch. Actually, the first creative meeting for the Portland version of the Bojangles show was 15 people on Zoom, and some of us were seeing each other for the first time in 10, 12 years, and we're like, oh, is that you? Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
You're so old. I became the old guy in the room. There used to be an older guy on the team, and he was voted off the island, but I somehow became the old guy, and I'm like, well, how'd that happen?
Let me tell you something. Walk around Hollywood now, okay, when I started off, I was like the young kid in his 20s who, was showing up with a bunch of young kids, and all the producers and directors were the old people. And at a certain point, I show up on set now. For the past 5 or 10 years, I'm always the oldest guy on set.
Yeah.
Always the oldest guy on set. Yeah. So it's just, learning to appreciate where you are. But it doesn't mean that we're not the proverbial young at heart, and we don't have, I've got all the ambition in the world, as it sounds like you do. There's still a lot of stuff for us to do, and to creative worlds for us to conquer. And you're going to do it. I'm hoping that I do it. I'm going to keep trying. But anyway, we will have another round of this because there's a lot that I still want to discuss with you, Eric Weiner. Thank you.
Okay, Dave Bean. Thank you. I'll tell all my friends about the Dave Bean show.
The Dave Bean is a C-List Actor
Zoomcast
with my very special guest, Eric Weiner. Thank you, Eric. I'm going to now reach for the Zoom button that ends this whole thing.
Zoom golly golly.
I'm going to talk with you sooner than you know. All right? Probably your phone's going to ring in about a minute or so. All right? There you go. Stay tuned.